was like the worst kept secret in all of Israel, right? So they kept blathering out. But then, here we are in the New Testament period, go forth. But instead of preaching on this gospel, which happens kind of in this area too, here we are in the Decapolis on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus had gone to. Now we're going to read the gospel concerning the current location that we are in, Kursi here, the Gerasene demoniac. So this is from Mark 5. They came to the other side of the sea, just like we did this morning, to the territory of the Gerasenes. When he got out of the boat, at once a man from the tombs who had an unclean spirit met him. The man had been dwelling among the tombs, and no one could restrain him any longer, even with a chain. In fact, he had frequently been bound with shackles and chains, but the chains had been pulled apart by him and the shackles smashed, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the hillsides, he was always crying out and bruising himself with stones. Catching sight of Jesus from a distance, he ran up and prostrated himself before him, crying out in a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." Jesus had been saying to him, "Unclean spirit, come out of the man." Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "Legion is my name. There are many of us." And he pleaded earnestly with him not to drive them away from that territory. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there on the hillside, and they pleaded with him, "Send us into the swine. Let us enter them." He let them, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine. The herd of about 2,000 rushed down a steep bank into the sea, where they were drowned. The swineherds ran away and reported the incident in the town and throughout the countryside. The people came out to see what had happened. As they approached Jesus, they caught sight of the man who had been possessed by Legion sitting there clothed and in his right mind. And they were seized with fear. Those who witnessed the incident explained to them what had happened to the possessed man and to the swine. Then they began to beg him to leave their district. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed pleaded to remain with him. But he would not permit him, but told him instead, "Go home to your family and announce to them all that the Lord in his pity has done for you." The man went off and began to proclaim in the Decapolis what Jesus had done for him, and all were amazed. So this is the gospel that we have read today. At the very site that these events happened, and these events happen for us today on what is called the Feast of St. Cyril and Methodius now in the new calendar, but in the old calendar it was the Feast of St. Valentine. So for all married couples and those who are seeking to fulfill the first commandment, to love as husband and wife, and be joined, the two in one, and then go forth and multiply. That's the purpose of this romantic love, to fulfill that commandment. So thank you for the gift of fulfilling that commandment, and for the love that you show one another. Marriage being this wonderful sacrament, Jesus elevates the natural gift of marriage to the element of a sacrament, and so we give thanks for all married couples here. Who's our oldest married couple? Make a mention of that on St. Valentine. How many years?
83 years.
80 years. Number of years anniversary-wise. 49. Can anybody beat 49? Going once. Oh, we got one. How many years?
On the 21st, it'll be 50.
We have a winner.
We got a winner.
All right, but we celebrate St. Cyril and Methodius, two great saints who took the gospel to the Slavic nations. But we'll do a meditation on this gospel passage today, the healing of the Gerasene demoniac. The scriptures have so many multiple layers attached to them. And we can read the scriptures according to these different layers. And the one that I've been concentrating on is the spiritual sense, just like I started the other day talking about how the temple was a prefigurement of what God was going to do with our soul. The only reason the temple exists is to show us what our soul is supposed to look like. The beauty of the temple is a prefigurement of the beauty of what God has done to our soul, right? In the same sense, we can read a spiritual lesson from this healing of the Gerasene demoniac. We as spiritual people are under spiritual attack. We've been that way since the beginning when the devil tempted the serpent, right? I have my little serpent in my did y'all see, everybody saw that, right? Found it on the ground, a stick that looks like a snake, right? And the devil has been tempting humanity ever since. And we see this man who has succumbed to this temptation and has been possessed by the devil, by many demons. Calls himself Legion, like a legion, the legion army, right? There was many people, right? Thousands of them. There are many of us. Legion is my name. So the man had been dwelling in the tombs, near the tombs. I guess there was a graveyard around here, right? This was a place of tombs.
Up there.
There it is. Okay, so in the caves, right? So there's a spiritual sense here of what does the devil want? He wants the death of humanity, right? He prowls about the world seeking the ruin of souls. So the devil has gotten hold of this fella, and so he's going to live where the devil wants him to live, in the tombs, near death. So the spiritual sense of the demonic possession is death. Now, they try to shackle him. They try to chain him down. And this is kind of allegorical, if you will, to the shackles and chains of addiction, right? And so many people are addicted, chemically, physically, emotionally, to so many different things in this world. And we know that if we give ourselves over to these passions of the flesh in so many different ways, lust, gluttony, even wrath and envy and greed and all these things, then we become shackled and chained by these things, and we are led to death from them. If we follow the way of the flesh, we are led to that death. Christ comes to set us truly free from these passions, these shackling chains. So it's curious that catching sight of Jesus from a distance, he ran up and prostrated himself. You know, the devil even knows how to worship. He knows who to worship, right? There's no getting around it. God is God. And so this man, maybe in a moment of lucidity, or maybe it's just the devil's recognizing what it is, comes and prostrates himself before God, and he calls him by his name. Look, Jesus, God who saves. And then he calls him by that title, Son of the Most High God. Not just the Son of Man, but God, the Son of the Most High God. He knows exactly who he is, the second person of the Holy Trinity. God in the flesh. God come to save. But it's interesting. This demoniac who is suffering from the oppression of the devil adjures God. He commands, he swears against God. He says, I adjure you by God. Do not torment me. The presence of God is torment to the devil. The presence of God is like salt in a wound for the devil. But what does salt do? It heals. But what do we do when we're little children and we're trying to get the medicine on us? And, oh, it stings, it hurts, it's hydrogen peroxide. Oh, it's horrible. Get it off of me. I adjure you by God. Do not torment me. But notice all the while, that's what Jesus is doing. He's putting the hydrogen peroxide onto the wound of this man by saying, unclean spirit, come out of the man. It's exorcism. He's praying him out. But then he says, what is your name? Remember that at your baptism? What? Yeah, I know. Let's be honest. Everybody's like, oh, yeah. Do we have any adult baptized here? Anybody? Adult baptized. All right, fantastic. Yeah, so it's got some. But you've been to baptisms, and what does the priest say? What is your name? What name has you given to this child, right? When Jesus asks your name, there's the beginning of a certain exorcism, and at baptism, especially when you do the more ancient form of the baptism, there are lots of exorcisms come out of this soul that God has called to be his own. He's given him his name, right? But what is your name? And he replies that famous, Legion is my name. But then he pleads for him not to drive him away from that territory. How many times do we come to God? We even prostrate ourselves. We bend the knee and we're like, oh, Lord, save me from this thing. Save me from whatever it is that's afflicting me. But don't save me too much. I kind of like this. We're kind of fond of our sins. We have to be careful of that. That's a spiritual thing. When we go into the interior life, we have to go around the center of our being and our soul and say, what am I pretending to dislike? When I'm around God. But secretly I'm going, yeah, but I really like that. Don't send me too far away from it. We have to break that shackle too, right? That spiritual clinginess to the things of this world. We're all addicted one way or another, addicted to this world, but we were made for something far greater. But then, of course, he says, send us into the swine. Swine being the unclean animal, the impure animals. But remember, though, the swine is about to be purified. We're going to go down the street, or go down the road a little ways and go see in Joppa, where God says, do not call unclean, but I have called clean. And that's where we're going to get the bacon after that. We should have bacon. We should.
That's right, it's Friday.
But that's tomorrow, is it? We're going to Joppa tomorrow, is that right? Or no, I don't know when we should have bacon. These swine go down into the sea and they're drowned. Now that's the symbol of baptism, even where God washes away our sin. He drowns. It's like the flood. All right, so the unclean spirit is drowned in this great act. But the swineherd, so I'll go with that first interpretation we were talking about on the bus. There's lots of interpretations, but that this was sort of a pagan area, non-Jewish area, and there were swine being herded. So it mentions the swine herds, and that this is their livelihood. And so all of a sudden, Jesus has allowed their cash animal to go into the sea and die, and they're like, what just happened? That's next month's rent. How am I going to eat my bacon now? You just send it into the sea. You can just imagine in the sea a whole bunch of pigs floating. Bay of Pigs, so I think it's the first Bay of Pigs out here, right? And they're floating out of the sea. And these people go back to the town and they're like, you'll never believe what just happened. Yeah, you remember those pigs you gave me? Yeah, they're gone. And so all the people come out and they're like, you got to get out of here. You just drowned our wealth. Right? Everything we were counting on in this world, you just put in the sea and they drown. How oftentimes do we do that when God forgives our sin, takes away our sin, takes away the occasion of our sin, and we're kind of like, yeah, but I'm really longing for that. I'm really wanting that. God, get out of here. I'm just going to get out of church, or I'm going to go away. I think a lot of people that are atheists because when they realize that if they follow God, if they acknowledge that God exists, they would have to stop doing what they like to do. And so well, let's just pretend that God doesn't exist. Let's tell him to get out of here. Yeah, just move along. Honestly, I think there's a lot of dishonest atheists. Look inside. We're all dishonest in that sense, right? Whenever judge not lest you yourself be judged, right? Once you say, oh boy, yeah, that person, oh wait, hang on, I do that too. If we're honest with ourselves, we do that too. So they begged him to leave their district. But then what does the man who's been cleansed say? You see, he pleaded to remain with him. It's a pious thought, right? Lord, let me just remain with you. Let me go with you. I got nothing here. Jesus, no. Your vocation is not one that you choose. It's one that you didn't choose me. I chose you. All right? And I want you to go and bear fruit. And what does he tell him to do? Something that he would probably think I would never want to do. He says, go home. Yes, there's a place for you at home. Go home. God has created a home for us in His home, in our hearts. We have a home for Him in His heart. We have a home in His sacred heart.